Welcome to Monograph Matters. I'm talking today with David Reiss, author of the SRCD Monograph on Parenting in the Context of the Child, Genetic and Social Processes. This discussion focuses on the origins of the work.
David, how did you get into this work? What led you to develop genetically informed studies of family relationships?
Well, I was trained as a psychiatrist, just as biological psychiatry was peeking its nose above the intellectual horizon of the field, and as a psychoanalyst, which very much was not a biological approach to patient care. And my research focused very much on very traditional studies of family interaction and their relationship to child development, but primarily under the influence of Robert Plomin, who was a chance lecturer in a training program that Mavis Hetherington and I developed. We were made to see very clearly that people in families are genetically related as well as socially related. And so the three of us did a study together, mainly to pursue the idea that it was differences in how children were treated, one sibling versus another, that genetic data suggested was the most important source of environmental influence. We didn't find out much about that, but what was absolutely stunning was the apparent impact of child's genetic influence on parenting. And I think even to this date, the study that the three of us did together had the most extraordinary measures of parenting collected from 900 pairs of twins and their parents all over the country. And almost 60% of the difference among families in parenting appeared to be attributable to genetically influenced characteristics of the child. But I realized, as did many of my colleagues who I've now been working with for a quarter of a century, there's a problem with twin methods, which is that parents know the zygosity of their siblings. So I turned to thoughts about an adoption study as long ago as 1994, because it seemed like stronger evidence. And if you could show that birth parents' characteristics could predict the parenting that an adopted child received, that would be very dramatic evidence, so long as you could account for intrauterine experience of the child. That'd be dramatic evidence of a genetically based child effect. So the adoption study has been very difficult to get started. It took us years to get adequate funding, and it's been a long, hard slog, but we certainly found that. And the monograph that SRCD kindly agreed to publish focuses on a variant of that fundamental theme.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Can you give us some examples or an example of a genetically informed child effect?
Oh, sure. We found a lot. We found that children who don't socially engage as a consequence of having parents who have the same kind of proclivity, withdrawn, not socially involved, their children placed for adoption elicit from parents a lot of hostility. Likewise, parents with ADHD kinds of symptoms, not necessarily the disorder, have children who are impulsive, again, a genetically based association, and those impulsive kids elicit depressive symptoms, interestingly enough, from their parents. And finally, we have children who are emotionally very labile, the characteristics of children whose parents have a broad range of psychopathology, and they elicit a lot of overreactivity from their parents. So they're not overwhelming effects in childhood as they seem to be in adolescence, but they are distinct. Intrauterine factors have been ruled out. Openness of adoption has been ruled out. They're not only distinct, but differentiated. So there's a kind of a code, and parents get a lot of information, whether they're aware of it or not, from the temperaments and behavior patterns of their children. And when Danny was talking about the matching or the attentiveness to what the child brings to the family, those are examples.
Read more about this topic in the Monograph issue, Parenting in the Context of the Child, Genetic and Social Processes, by Reiss, Ganaban, Lev, Niederheiser, Shaw, and Natsuaki. If you liked this video, consider watching our Monograph Matters playlist. For additional resources related to this and other issues of the monographs of the Society for Research in Child Development, please visit monographmatters.srcd.org.